Good morning, friends. There's a game that is near and dear to my heart that I have been playing a lot lately. I thought I was a baller, y'all, but until I learned this game, I knew nothing. And that game is called Peekaboo, okay? Peekaboo. It's a hardcore game, don't get me wrong, okay? Now, I play Peekaboo with my son, Judson, all the time. And friends, I just gotta admit, he's pretty good at it. I like his outlook, except he doesn't call it peekaboo. We call it, where is he? Let me explain, okay? I'll put Judson's burp cloth over his face, and I'll totally act like I don't know where he is, which, by the way, I'm his dad. I know exactly where he is, okay? But I will allow the fun to happen. I'll cover his face, and I'll say, where's Judson? Where's Judson? And then I or he will pull the cloth from his face and I'll say, there he is. And y'all, it is the cute, actually, you just need to watch it. You need to experience the cuteness. Check this out.
Where's Judson?
Where's he at? Where is he? There he is! Yeah. Hi. Where's Judson? Where is he? There he is! Boo.
He absolutely loves this game. Now, the reason I start there is because I want to bring up an argument, if you will, this morning about us as human beings. I could argue that most of us, either through life experience or just because we really like to play the game, play this game called Peekaboo, or Where Is He? Except we play it a touch different. In fact, we don't use a burp cloth, but we do use other things, right? Like material possessions, status, money, social media, isolation, or maybe it's the secret sin that nobody knows about. And we use these things and we hide behind them, but here's the difference in the game we play versus what my son plays, okay? We never jump out from behind the cloth. In fact, we perfect ways to live behind them where eventually people will either never know about it or they will become so convinced, like we are so good at this, they will become so convinced that that's exactly who we are. We have become master performers in our human condition, hoping and praying that someone will not rip away the burp cloth and yell, oh, that's exactly who they are. There he is. There she is. This morning, I want to talk to you about a word called authenticity. And I want to talk about the power that that word could have in our life. So I want to start by this. If you would just write this down, maybe take a picture of it, because this is going to be the premise of everything we talk about today. The depth of truly knowing God and his heart for you will be determined by how authentic you are with him and others. The depth of truly knowing God and his heart for you will be determined by how authentic you are with him and others. This morning, we talk about the power of authenticity, and I want to read Ephesians chapter 4. Paul's writing his dear friends, and I think it's so suitable to set up what we're going to talk about. Starting in verse 21, it says this. It says, since you've heard about Jesus and learned the truth that comes from him, throw off your old sinful nature, your former way of life, which is corrupted by lust and deception. Instead, let the Spirit renew your thoughts and attitudes. Put on the new nature, created to be like God, truly righteous and holy. And then verse 25, so stop telling lies. Let us tell our neighbor the truth, for we are all part of the same body. Well, if I can step into an authentic moment with you, this is about how far I got in my sermon preparation this week. God absolutely stopped me in my tracks. And I had every intention of laboring hard over writing a sermon that would give us incredibly biblical ways to be authentic. I was gonna share with you what those meant to me, how they've played out in my life, and I was gonna charge you to live an authentic life with God and with others. And that honestly is still my plan. But how I'm gonna do that has changed dramatically for me. On Wednesday, I'm sitting to write this sermon, and I heard God say, why would you not share what's true in your life? So I called someone very dear to me, and I processed that thought, and God started to orchestrate things that can only be explained by him, and I literally could not deny that this was what I was supposed to do today. So friends, I want to share with you my story, a story that I have never told in an arena that I can't control, for one reason only, because I feel like God asked me to do it. And my hope and my prayer is that he will draw us deeper to being more authentic with him and more authentic with ourselves and more authentic with others. I was born in the small town of Madisonville, Texas, right down the road from A&M for all you guys that need to whoop at home. My mom worked at the school, the elementary school. My dad owned a business with his family. We grew up on a lot of land. It was really cool to be a kid on. We got to explore. We got to build forts. We got to ride dirt bikes and three-wheelers that we wrecked way too often, and it was incredibly awesome to be a kid. However, there is something that I picked up in my childhood that has been a source of struggle for me in my life. At 9 years old, I discovered pornography. I actually stumbled on it. It was not mine. I did not go looking for it. There was nothing in my head that said I wanted to go find that. I just stumbled on it. And I remember the first time I saw it thinking these two things. Number one, this is really interesting and I'm feeling things I've never felt. And number two, I can't tell anybody about this. From the very get-go, the enemy was convincing me of something that would play out the rest of my life. So from the age of 9 to 13, that thing that was so interesting, yet so secret, I kept periodically exploring. And no one knew. Now here's what's true. I had really good parents, and if they would have known, they would have kept me from it, okay? They loved me incredibly dearly. But what's also true is that I had formed this belief that I could not let anyone know about this. I had even formed the belief that if even my parents knew, or if somebody knew, they would think I'm weird and they wouldn't want me. It was an enemy lie. It was not true, but it was what I believed. And so this started the road of performing, and man, did I get good at it. And I want to share that a little bit more about that later. But I turned 13, and my family takes a devastating loss. My dad, who was really the glue that held our family together, passed away. This was literally the most painful thing that any of us could have endured. I was talking about it this week with somebody, and I remember walking into the funeral service, and the room was packed. It was mind-blowing to me. To this day, one of the most painful events in our family's life and has reverberated, but guess who was there to comfort me in the years ahead? It was that thing that nobody knew about. Through high school, there were these three things that were true for me. Number one, I wanted to be really good at sports, and I had a lot of fun doing it. I had really good friends. We had a lot of fun. Number two, I missed my dad. And number three, anytime I needed to go visit this old friend that I had picked up, I knew where to go find it. It wasn't as consistent in high school, but again, I will say, nobody knew this about me. It was also around high school that I formed or began my second struggle, and that was my relationship with food. Food was the acceptable addiction, right? We all do it together, and nobody really questions that. And here's what also happened that was a catalyst to my addiction was that I began to drive. So now I had access. Fast food just became my safe place. The feeling that food gave me, I know it could be hard to understand, but it was really like a drug. I would take a bite, and it was like I got a high. But the cool thing was, I was young, and I was playing sports, and those calories were not showing up. I could burn them off. It was literally the perfect thing. I was a good kid, y'all. I had a lot of fun in high school. Now, here's what's true about me. I was a people pleaser. I made average grades. I played varsity sports. I had great friends. We had a lot of fun. And what's also true is I learned the art of making sure everything looked good. I taught myself to become funny and witty. I excelled at the things I did. I made sure that people weren't mad at me, and if they were, it bothered me deeply. I was a nice person. My teachers liked me. I didn't cause problems. I never got sent to the principal. But here's the truth about performance, okay? It's like a magic trick. We get people to look over here so that they will not look over here, so they wouldn't see what's really going on. And then Jesus invades my life. I was raised in church. My mom took us. I was really involved in our youth ministry. What was also true is I was mad at God for taking our dad, and I was fully involved in these periodic struggles. But I really loved going to church for various reasons. One of those were that's where my friends were. It was a small town. That's what we did. I prayed to accept Jesus when I was 10, and I fully understood what that meant. And I was baptized, but the surrender part of it was lost on me. I was just a good kid. Then the summer before my senior year, God used summer camp to really wreck my life. It was at summer camp that year that not only did I fully surrender the parts of me that he didn't have yet, but I felt this nudge from him, and I wasn't excited about it at first, that ministry may be something I want to pursue. But what would I do with these two friends that I carried with me everywhere that nobody knew about? I mean, I'd kept them hidden from age 9 to 17. Why tell anybody now? I didn't do anything to anyone. I didn't harm anyone. I cared deeply about people. So I decided that I would just stop. That way I could follow Jesus, but I wouldn't have to incur any embarrassment about the things that I had done. Nobody has to know, and then it would be in the past, and it would be over with, and I could press into everything that God was. Let me share a truth with you that I want you to take to heart this morning. Anything that we leave in the dark will always cause us harm. Anything. I decided I wanted to pursue ministry, so I went to the University of Mary Hardin-Baylor. My freshman year in college was such a really great year. I had this chance to really be whoever I wanted to be. I got involved in ministry on campus and student government. I met really good friends that actually stood with me on this stage when I married my wife. I was pursuing hard after Jesus. I was becoming something new, and I really liked it. And then came the day. I was in a guy's dorm room playing video games. I did not know this guy. I was there because a friend of mine invited me. And I saw that he had some of the old friends that I was accustomed to. I was so drawn to it. These thoughts, I can remember them vividly. They went through my head. Ask him if you can see it. Ask him if you can borrow it. There's something that was so attractive to me about it. And here's the game changer. Now I'm an adult, right? Like I can do what I want, and I don't have to worry about parents catching me. I could go where I want. I could hide what I wanted. And I remember the fight in my head. It's like, don't pursue this, Weston. You have this monumental chance to leave it behind. But that was closely followed by, but you know what? Nobody would know. You've stopped before, maybe just one more time, and then we'll just start over. I wanted to say no, but that's not what I picked. I waited until everybody left the room, and I actually stole it. I hid it in my dorm room. I waited for a few days because I was terrified, and then I picked that old friend back up that I had left in the dark a year before. What I realized is that friend was anxiously awaiting my return. Then, when I was done, I went to the campus cafeteria, which was this buffet-style dining, and I ate. That old feeling came back. My old friends were back with me at this new place, and still nobody knew. The next few years, what was true is that they were good and they were hard in the same time. Because I was a ministry student. I was somebody that people needed to look up to. You want to talk about performance. I was doing what most of us do with the things that we don't want people to know about. I was elevating the things that people would celebrate about me while I was making sure the things that I thought they would hate me about would stay in the dark. And can I just tell you, there's zero freedom in that? Because at the end of the day, we don't lay in bed with the person that we elevated. We lay in bed with the whole person. We're the ones still behind the cloth. I got my hands on more and more. I was eating nonstop. Instead of eating what I needed, I got extra. I even, a source of, as I was thinking through this, something I grieved, I had taken out a credit card that I bought so I could buy food because I couldn't afford the stuff I was doing. And so I had no intention of paying that card back, by the way. I could not see the devastation or destruction that could cause me. All of this happening while I was in school learning how to be a pastor. I was interning at churches. I was leading D-Nows. What a phony, right? I had gained over 100 pounds. My grades were suffering. I remember this one time I was in college and I was in the exercise sports science building. That was my minor. And there was a professor there that just loved me and he was concerned about me. He said, hey, let's come by and we can look at your body composition. And I jumped on the scale and I learned that I was 450 pounds. I left there incredibly sad. And I went straight to the dining hall and I ate. And I cried. It was this glaring reality of how bad it had gotten. And still, no one knew, because you know what I did? I walked out of there and I acted like a good little pastor boy. I even was a part of Bible studies and accountability. It was that type of accountability where we never really name anything. We just give things vague names. Like I would tell people like I struggle with lust so that they would think that I'm spiritually deep, but they wouldn't ask more questions than they needed to. The devastation that was happening inside, though, that was scary for me is that it was starting to manifest itself on the outside, and I was ashamed. I graduated college, and I continued working in Belton. And I continued the cycle. There were seasons where I would get fed up with it or I would get convicted because this whole time I really did love God. And I would say things like, that's it, I'm done, no more. God, I don't want to do this anymore, only to allow my old friends to come back home. In fact, something in our society changed because now our home had Wi-Fi internet. High speed. I didn't have to go look for stuff anymore. It came to me. And I had access 24/7. And I had just bought this really cool invention called the iPhone. So not only was it home with me, but it was in my back pocket wherever I went. There came a point where our family was going through another loss, and I called my mom and I asked her if I could come home. I told her I wanted to start looking for a ministry job, which was very true, but I also wanted a fresh start. I think she could feel the desperation in me. And honestly, while I was home, the struggle was not as constant. Sure, I would binge on food. The place I worked, the little check I got while I was at home, I spent on my cell phone and food. But here's what was also true. I was sad. I was lonely. And I wasn't lonely because there weren't people around me that loved me. I was lonely because nobody knew who I really was. Even as I prepared this, I grieved that. I lost a lot of life because of that. Because I would not let anyone in. Thankfully, God was still in hot pursuit of me. He allowed me to move to Dallas and to take a part-time student ministry job with some really great people who I love really deeply. I went back to that old transition when I left high school into college and that thought of, you know what, this is a new beginning. I can stop this. No one has to know. And I can be on my road to health and no embarrassment. No. But I want to remind you, the things that we leave in the dark, they will always cause us harm. This time I stayed away from my struggle for months at a time. I mean, how could I tell students to walk with Jesus? And how could I tell students that sin was bad for them if I had secret sin? There are pastors that get on stages week after week that are just like me who battle this like crazy. Then I would stumble into temptation. I would view. And then I would say, God, I'm really sorry. I don't want to do this anymore. This was the last time, I promise. I can't tell you how many times I said that. This is how addiction works, though. We act out and then we feel deep shame only to eventually walk back into our drug. Except for in my life, it looked like drawn out over months at a time. I would act out. I would say that was it. I wouldn't tell anybody. And then I would spend the next 6, 8, 10 months slowly crawling back to it. These were incredibly lonely days for me. It was not out of the ordinary for me to leave my office at the church, go to the local fast food place, get the double whatever they had, the biggest drink they had, stop at the gas station, get 2 pints of ice cream, go home, eat that, feel incredibly ashamed. And it's funny because shame is still present when nobody knows. And then fall asleep and do it all over again the next day. Y'all, I started diet after diet after diet. Like, I can't tell you how many times. Every day was gonna be the day that I started new. And usually by mid-morning, it was over. You see, addicts, they usually hate their addiction more than anybody, and they can't stop, and they don't know why. And here was the hard thing for me. I had just passed a milestone. I had turned 29, and I had successfully, for 20 years, performed in a way where still nobody knew. Because if they really knew me, they would reject me, right? If they really knew who I was, they would think it was a mistake to even know me. That was the lie that was formed when I was 9. I remember the date came January 19th, 2015. I acted out in my addictions, and that night I asked God why it was this way. I was crying. I was sitting alone in my house. I was begging God to take things away from me. I did not want to be this person. See, that night I was sad because earlier in the day I had to go to the doctor because I was dealing with some stuff. And they had to bring out a special scale to weigh me. And I learned that day that I was 491 pounds. And the doctor decided to have a friendly conversation with me about my obesity. She said this, and I'll never forget it. She said, "You got one of 2 choices, sir. You can live the next 5 to 10 years, and then you can die early, or you can do something different." I was devastated. This was just a physical representation of what was going on in my life, because remember, I told you this would be months at a time. But what she didn't know is that earlier in that year, I had dropped 70 pounds only to slowly add it back on. It felt as though this was as good as it was going to get. It was downhill from here. I had tried really hard before, and this is where I landed. So I went home, and I ran to what had always been faithful. And I really contemplated her question. Should I just enjoy the next 5 to 10 years and then roll the dice? But I ran back to that faithful friend who had always been there, the facade that had convinced me that eventually these things would make me feel loved and desired and wanted and safe and affirmed. And it wasn't that people weren't trying to give those things to me. But this was what I was looking for. And I remember I laid on my floor that night alone. All those people that we're trying to convince that everything's okay, that we're hiding behind this stuff, right? We're hiding behind the house or the success. We're going to the secret sin when when the walls are caving in, those people aren't in the room. They sure weren't there for me. I was crying out to God, asking him, why in the world can't I stop this? Why can't I shake this? I knew the Bible. I knew the verses. I was really good at this game. I was really good at being a pastor who knew all the right answers all the time, but I couldn't answer the question in my life. I was a pastor who really loved God, and I could not stop. And nobody knew. And then I had this thought, and I know it's from the Lord. And he said, what if you told somebody? What if you let somebody know? What if you were truly authentic about what's been going on? This was a terrifying thought for me because there was a ton of risk in that. You see, I could lose a lot. But as I contemplated the thoughts, here's what I learned. I'm probably going to lose stuff anyway, so why not? And so on January 20th of 2015, I get in my truck in the evening and I drive to my first recovery meeting. And you know what I did? I told them nothing. Because on the way, I was convinced again that if they really knew me, people that don't even know me, that they would reject me. Because even though I was in the room, I didn't buy in. Friends, we step into this church all the time, and we can come to worship, and we can participate in the messages. You can even go to your small group, and you can be in the room. And some of us, we're not buying in, though. Some of us, there is no change in our life because we refuse to let people see the things that we hate about ourselves. Just because you're in the room doesn't mean you're free. Really, the core belief was that if God really knew me, he would see that there was a mistake, that he should not have put me in the places that he put me, that I should not have been involved in the ministry that I was involved in. But here's what was true. There was nobody in existence that wanted health for me more than God did. God was not angry with me. He wanted more for me. He wanted full life. God did not cause the devastation in my life. My sin did. I went to meetings for 3 months, and I wasn't acting out, and I felt as though this was going to be the road to getting better. These were going to be the recipes that I needed and the ingredients I needed to really do this thing, to become something different. But what I didn't know is that I was missing a major ingredient, and that ingredient is authenticity. I had still yet to be fully known by anyone. In fact, at meetings, when someone asked me if I wanted to share, I would just say, I just want to be here and be encouraged. Thank you for letting me be in the room. Sure, I wasn't acting out, but I was not free. And in March, I get a phone call from my friend Robert. And there was a job that was going to be coming available for a student pastor at a church called Friendswood Community Church, now known as the Harbor. And he said, man, I think you should apply. And I remember I got so excited. I mean, this could be how God was going to give me my third or fourth or fifth or whatever chance it was. And I could move and I could really begin to start to live. And the best part was, I had spent the last few months as a different person. It was working. And I had zero clue what was going on. And I didn't know that God was about to do something shocking, but it was going to require much of me. I had some interviews, and I got to this point where I was the lone person they were talking to for the position, and I was to fly down that long flight from Dallas to Houston for more in-person interviews, and so I could see this beautiful place. I got on the plane, and it took off, and a 35-minute plane ride turned into an eternity for me. Because while I'm on the plane ride, and I'll never forget this, the seat next to me was open. And I'm fully convinced it was to give me space to struggle. I hear the soft, sweet voice of God say, would you trust me enough to tell them everything? No, I really want the job. I want a fresh start. And if they knew me, God, they will reject me. And here's the truth, man. They had every right to say no. And then it was followed by this over and over again. When are you going to fully trust me? Like, fully trust me. And I felt like the next move was one of those life or death moments. I felt, in essence, like God and I were playing the game. Where is he? Where's Weston? And it was my turn to pull the cloth down. So, in the first interview of the day that morning, I'm sitting with Kevin Pate and Tim Gerald's in a booth in Dunbros. And somewhere in the interview, I can't remember where, I just stop them and I tell them everything. I probably had to jump in like it was cold water, fully expecting to get a one-way opportunity back to Hobby Airport and a ticket back home. I just told them what was true. That if I was the one God wanted here, I needed to be fully known. And I needed them to know who they were getting. And I needed them to know that I need help because I cannot stop and I haven't been able to do this on my own for 20 years. Authenticity. Allowing others to see what is fully true in our life. And for the first time, somebody knew. Well, obviously, I was God's man for the job because I'm here talking to you today as one of the pastors of the Harbor. In fact, on August the 2nd, I got to celebrate 5 years of being here, and it was a day that, man, we celebrated. My wife and I celebrated. We celebrated with Rick and Marie. And I love being a part of this team and this church. They are some of the realest people that I have ever known in my life. And that is not an indictment on anyone else. This is just my experience here. The authenticity that we experience on our staff is mind-blowing to me. When we struggle, we talk. When we hurt, we talk. There's another date that's even more meaningful to me, though. Because in January, I celebrated 5 years of being sober from the things that I struggled with. From the moment that I was authentic, I was met with love and truth. Because here's what's true too. Just because we're authentic, that doesn't mean that we don't need to be met with truth. You hear person after person get up here on this stage or stages like it here at our church, and they just share what is true. And the hope is that you would join us there. Our sign outside, it says, "Come as you are." And that's literally not just a phrase that we think is going to get people in the door. That is the heart of Jesus. That we would come just as we are and not as we should be. The power of authenticity. It is the depth of truly knowing God and His heart for you, and it will be determined by how authentic you are with Him and with others. Even though my life had some really sweet moments, what is also true is that there has been nothing that has caused more damage than my addictions. And there has been nothing sweeter to me than recovery. Being authentic showed me God's heart for me. And for the last 5 years, I've got to walk in a freedom that I can't explain to you without you joining me there. Did sin have consequences? You bet. Still does. One of the hardest days of my life was taking my girlfriend to Galveston, my now wife, and telling her this. I had no intentions of having to share that with somebody one day. But again, I was met with love and truth. And I'm still engulfed in the journey. Here's the things that authenticity has given me. There's still a journey ahead. It's a good journey, and God invites all of us on it. Because where sin exists, the journey is needed. And all of us have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. But here's what authenticity has given me. It's given me freedom. It's given me hope, love, truth, joy, purpose. I don't have to perform anymore. I've gotten to be a husband and a dad. I'm getting physically healthy. Like, I stand here today 5 years later, and I've lost over 140 pounds. And that was all tied to me being open and honest about my struggles. This is not about me looking better. I already got the girl. She's way too pretty for me anyway. No, this is about me seeing and believing God's heart for me. And placing myself in a position to be able to say yes when He says go. If we're going to experience the power of authenticity, we're going to have to press into things like being aware, embracing what is true, humility, full dependence on God, vulnerability, sharing things that people could actually use against you, but trusting God that it's the right move. courage and desperation, and this is the last thing I'll share, I reached a point where the risk outweighed what I could lose. If I lost everything but I got freedom, I was ready for it. I was ready to endure the consequences that would have meant in my life. And I truly believe that authenticity saved my life. And that's not a metaphor. It saved me spiritually, but I don't know if I would be here physically if it wasn't for that moment where I shared with two men what was really true. And here's the beautiful thing. I was met with the goodness of God like I can't even explain to you. Fertile ground for healing. So much power and authenticity. So I wonder what God would be asking you to be authentic about. I hope you hear my heart. Would you want to come out from behind the cloth that you've been hiding under? Because the level at which we're known is the level that we can be loved by God and by others. And I think about what I could have missed out on if I would have said no. I double dog dare you to trust him. We're going to sing, and then I want to come back up here and share one more thing with you. So would you pray with me? Father, this thing called authenticity, it takes incredible courage, vulnerability, awareness. But here's just what I know is true. These are the conversations that you have desired to have with us for years. And I thank you for saving my life. I thank you for saving me. Not only spiritually, but I thank you for this reality that we really can come to you as we are and not as we should be. And that's going to be the most fertile place that we can start walking, like truly walking with you side by side. And so I pray for the person who hears this morning and is scared to death. And I pray that they would have the courage to step into authenticity, that you would provide them safety, that you would provide them comfort. God, our sin has wreaked havoc on us for far too long. Let us be a church that is marked by being okay with sitting in what is true. And then let us be a church that walks closely to you because we have to come to you as we are and not as we should be. In Jesus' name, amen.